All right, hey class. So today we're gonna go ahead and go over how to create more advanced Tableau data visualizations, but also we're gonna put these visualizations together and create a analytics dashboard. The analytics dashboard is going to be something that is important for your final project. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in and start to do these visualizations and bridge it all together and create these analytics dashboards very soon. So what we're doing here in week 8, so we're under week 8. It's not machine learning that we're doing. We've already done machine learning. We're going to be doing our second module on Tableau. Here are the lecture notes if you need. The lecture notes on week 8 Tableau, basically on data visualization, looking at relationships, joins, and dashboards. All of this is right here in the lecture notes. These are basically screenshots. So if you wanted to follow along and look at the screenshots, that can be done as well. Or you can kind of watch this video and we are just going to go through and create those visualizations. The data set that we are going to use is this data set right here, P1 Amazing Mart AU. And so I'm just going to go ahead and download that. And when we download it, we can kind of go ahead and open it up to see what kind of data we're dealing with. And we see that essentially in the data, we have about 3 different tabs. Okay. We were using data sets in the past with all of our data just existing in one tab. This is one of the first data sets we're using where we actually have 3 different tabs. Okay. Looks like the data is, we have like order ID, order date. So it essentially looks like consumer data, retail data. So it looks like different things. Consumers are being split into, different kind of segments based on their shopping habits. This is all, it looks like European data, shipping of different items. Then we have tab for order breakdown, which shows the order ID again, but all the different products that have been purchased, discounts, sales, how many profits made, quantity sold, different product categories and subcategories. And in the third tab here, in the sales target tab, looks like they kind of have a monthly target that they wanted to acquire for each of these different categories. All right, so this is the data set. Just gonna close this here, and then we're gonna go right into Tableau. So go ahead and open up Tableau. So we're just gonna wait for it to load. Notice that the file that we had opened up, the P1 Amazing Mart file, is an Excel file. So we will be opening that up in connecting to it in Tableau through the Excel connection. If Tableau ever manages to open. There we go, finally. All right. So as I mentioned, here's the Tableau page. It is an Excel file that we want to connect to. So we're going to go ahead and click on Microsoft Excel. And it's going to open this up for us. And I believe I've downloaded it somewhere. Yeah, let's see. It's called P1 Amazing Mart. All right, I have 2 of them, whatever. P1 Amazing Mart. We'll open this. It's an Excel file. And we're going to hit open. So once we hit open, it's going to take the data and it's going to open this page for us here. So notice how in this page here, we don't have the summary of the Excel spreadsheets like we had before, right? We just have this empty space. The reason for this is once it's made this connection to the data set, it's also listed the different tabs that exist in the data. So it doesn't know which one you're going to use or how many of these you're going to use for your data visualization. That's why it has this empty space and it says drag the tables into here. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the first tab here, list of orders. So what you want to do here is you want to click on this and drag it to this blank area here and release. Once you do that, now we'll kind of see a page which kind of looks similar to what we've seen before, right? We have our data tab right here, data table. we get a summary, and we get this kind of summary of all the data that's there. Okay, perfect. If we wanted to just visualize everything from this segment right here, and we had everything we needed in this list of orders data table, we could easily just go to sheet 1, for example, and start working with these dimensions and measures. But of course, in this case, we are going to use our entire data sheet. Okay, we're going to use all the data we can in the Excel file. So we're not going to stick with just sheet 1. So let's go back to data source, and we're going to start dragging and dropping all of these other data tables as well. So to do that, we're going to go to the second one here, order breakdown. We're going to click on it, and we're going to drag it here. And once we drag it here, we'll see this little line or this little connector form, right? So this little connector is basically showing that we want to essentially create a relationship between list of orders and order breakdown. So once we release this, Tableau will automatically, what it'll do is automatically try to establish a relationship between list of orders and order breakdown. And it does this automatically by looking for columns that are common between these two tables, right? So in list of orders, there's order ID, and it's recognized that the order ID column in list of orders is the same as the order ID column in the order breakdown table. So it's used this as a reference table or a key to essentially create a relationship between these two tables. Tableau does this differently from, say, SQL. So if you're joining data in SQL or MySQL, then what you're doing essentially is something very similar, where you use a key or a very common data field between two tables, and you merge those two tables together. So you join them together. So when you use something like SQL and you write the query to join these two tables together based on a key column, you are actually physically joining these two tables together and creating a brand new table. In Tableau, it doesn't do that. It essentially doesn't do joins. What Tableau does, it establishes a virtual relationship between these two tables. So it creates this virtual connection, but doesn't actually create a new physical table. Okay? Good. All right. So now let's go ahead and try to incorporate the next one, right? So sales targets are here. That's the third table. Let's say we take sales targets and we drag it all the way over here. And let's say hypothetically we just want sales targets to connect with list of orders as well. So let's just drop it here. When we do that, you'll see that in this case, we get an error, right? We get an error. And basically what's happening here is that Tableau is unable to identify the reference field or the key common field between list of orders and sales targets. We know that there isn't a reference column between these two tables. That's why this error is correct. But let's say hypothetically it's not, then we can go ahead and actually physically designate which the key reference table is, or key reference column is, between these two tables. Okay, but in this case we know that there isn't a common column between these two tables, so we are actually not going to keep this connection. What we're going to do is I'm going to click on sales targets, and we're just going to drag it a little further so that it establishes a connection with order breakdown. And now we have the correct relationship between order breakdown and sales targets, and the relationship is under product category. Okay, product category is the key column between order breakdown and sales targets, while in the list of orders it is something different. It is order ID, right? It is the order ID that is the common one, right? So if you click on this relationship, you get to see that order ID is the common key reference data field for between these two tables. Perfect. Now we have all of this stuff joined up. We're going to go ahead and go to sheet 1. And now you can see that all the data is here from all the different data tables, and we are going to be able to now do our our data visualizations. All right, so one of the things you may notice right off the bat is you get this interesting little thing here. This thing is called a hierarchy. So it's a new type of measure or new type of dimension. When you have geographical data, Tableau will automatically try to create something like a hierarchy. So a hierarchy here, in this case, is a grouping of other dimensions within the umbrella of one dimension, right? So now we have country, state, and city information, geographical information, all within the umbrella or the hierarchy that is denoted automatically by Tableau. But let's say you didn't have this hierarchy. So let's say hypothetically, let's go ahead and remove the hierarchy. So right click, remove hierarchy. Now what we've done here is just kind of opened up that umbrella, that hierarchy, and moved all the dimensions outside of that hierarchy. So let's say all of that information, geographical information, is there. We know we have a data column on city. We know we have a data column on country and state. And let's say we do actually want to create a hierarchy. To do that, it's very simple. We can just take one of the elements of the geographical data dimensions and just drag it into the other. So for example, we can take city here and drag it on top of country and let go, and that instantly creates a hierarchy for us. Okay, so we're gonna rename this hierarchy and call it like map or something like that, and we're gonna press OK, and that instantly creates a hierarchy for us right here with country and city. Of course, there's one more missing element, which is the state. So we're gonna take state and we're gonna drag it right in between country and city, right there. So once we do that, we've actually completed the hierarchy from highest to lowest. Okay, that's how you have to kind of create the hierarchy, right? So the highest level down to the lowest level of that geographical information, and the hierarchy here denoted by this little collapsible little triangle. Okay, and we called our hierarchy map. All right, so now let's go ahead and start visualizing things, right? So right off the bat, let's go ahead and do a map, or start with a map visualization. So we're going to take our map hierarchy and we're going to drag it right into the middle, and we're going to drop it. So once we do that, we see that the visualization is created, and it's a map visualization with dots all around this map of Europe. Okay, so all around this map of Europe, we have these little dots. How many dots do we have? Well, if you look at the bottom left, it says 15 marks. That means you have 15 data points in this visualization, which represents data from 15 countries. Do you see this level right here? This is level of detail. It says country. So it is displaying one data point, showing you that you have data for that specific country. And how many countries do you have? How many countries of data you have? You have 15 marks. So you have 15 data. You have data from 15 countries visualized in this visualization. If we go up here to this little plus sign right here, and we click that plus, now what'll happen is suddenly we'll see a lot more dots, right? What happens to our marks? If you look down here, it says we have 128 marks. That means we have data points, or 128 data points in this visualization. And those 128 data points represent information of all the state level information data points that we have. Okay, if we go one further, so if we go here next to state and we click this little plus sign, we can go down all the way to the lowest level, which is city level information. And so now we have a whole bunch more dots that are suddenly appear in the visualization. And we look down here in the marks, it says we have 1,000 marks. That means that we have 1,000 data points being shown in this visualization. And those 1,000 data points are data points from 1,000 cities, because we're visualizing at the city level. All right. But of course, the city level is very messy. So I'm going to go back up here, click this little negative sign right here to bring it back up one level of hierarchy to the state level. All right, perfect. So now we've started to visualize geographical information. So the next thing we want to do is maybe we want to start adding a little bit more information to this visualization. Maybe we want to add some other data here. One good thing to think about to add here is something maybe numerical, right? So what we could add here is perhaps total sales, right? How much product did we sell in each of these different states, in each of these different countries? So we're going to go down here, and we have sales data right here. We're going to take our sales and we are going to drag it to size. Okay, so once we do that, we get our sum of sales. So it's showing total sales, and it's actually showing or segmenting sales based on the size of the circles. So the larger the circle, the more sales. The smaller the circles, the less sales. And now you can see that in all of these different states, suddenly you have big circles and little circles as well. It's a little hard to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the circles bigger. And to do that, we can click on size under this marks category. And once we click size, we'll get this little slider. Now this little slider enables us to make these circles larger. So I'm going to put it here, and suddenly now the circles are larger. All right. So the other thing we want to keep in mind here is we also have time-related information, right? We have information from a number of years in this data set, right? If you look at order ID, you'll see that expands from, I think it's 2011 to 2014. So the data that's being represented here, the total sales, it's the total sales of all 4 years, right? But perhaps we don't want to visualize that. Perhaps we want to visualize what is the year-to-year change in total sales over time. So to do this and to looking at the visualization and creating a dynamic visualization that goes from year to year to year, we are actually going to put order date into a filter and use that to scroll through or slide through the different years. Okay, so if we go up here to order date, we can take order date and we can put it into a filter. So when we do that, Tableau will ask us, all right, you have order date. How do you want that filter to interact, right? There's many different options for us to use. We're going to go at the highest level. We're going to select years because there's 4 years worth of data, and I just want to look at year-to-year information. So I'm going to select year, click next, and now it's going to look through the data and tell me that, okay, you have 4 years worth of data here. Which one do you want to use in your filter? And I'm going to say all because we want to use all 4 years. And then I will hit OK. Once I hit OK, the filter will show up here. And I need to click on this drop-down menu to go ahead and click Show Filter. So once I do that, you'll see that filters is being shown right here. And I'm just going to drag these to the bottom here so we can get a better view of our visualization. So once we have this filter here, I'm actually going to change the way it interacts. I don't want this all section here. So I'm going to click on this drop-down menu, go to Customize, get rid of the check mark next to all value. So now I just have the 4 years being represented, and I actually want to have this as a slider. So I'm going to go back here, click on the drop down and go to single value slider. And this is going to allow me to basically scroll from year to year to year. Okay, let me that up here so it doesn't move around so much. So go to 2011 and notice how the circles get bigger and smaller depending on which year we are in. Okay, so in some years we had really high sales in certain regions, and some years we had very low sales in that same region as well. So total sales were very dynamic across these 4 years. Okay, so the next step here is let's consider whether or not these sales were profitable or not, right? Because maybe we sold a lot of things to the United Kingdom, but what was it profitable? Did we actually make money on all these sales in 2011, right? 2011 total sales here about just under $75,000. Was this successful? Was this profitable for us or not? We don't have that level of information, but we can have that level of information. What we could look at is something called the profit margin. Okay, we could create a ratio called the profit margin. To do that, since that measure isn't there already, we can do what's known as a calculated field. So again, calculated field, you can do it a number of different ways. You can go to an empty space here in this left-hand side, right-click, and go to create calculated field. Or you can go up here to analysis, go down to here and say create calculated field. So let's go ahead and create a calculated field. We are going to call this calculated field profit margin. Okay, profit margin. That's what we want. The equation for profit margin is sum, and then click on it, sum of profit, click, slash, which is divided by sum, then click on that, of sales. And then we're going to select that measure right there. So once you've done that correctly, you'll see that it'll say that the calculation is valid, and we are going to hit OK. So once we hit OK, we have this calculated field for us known as profit margin, and we are going to take this and we are going to put it under color. So we're going to put it under color. Once we put it under color, again, I'm going to drag this down here. We're going to see that certain cities, certain regions light up in blue, and certain regions light up in red. Okay, essentially what we've done is we created a ratio where anywhere it is profitable is positive, and when it's positive, it's going to be blue, which means that we're profitable, and anywhere we are unprofitable, the number is going to be negative, the ratio is going to be negative, and if it's negative, it's going to show up in red, and we're going to be able to see the areas that we were unprofitable in that kind of section. All right, so now this looks decent, but we are actually going to punch up the colors a little bit here, right? So to do that, and we're going to change the ratio here as well, because it automatically picked these numbers for us, and I actually want different numbers. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to marks, and we're going to click on color. So once we click on color, we actually get to go ahead here and edit colors. So we're going to click edit colors, and we can actually go ahead and select a complete different color palette if we want. Please play around with it if you want in the future to see what kind of different things you can do. For us, we're going to keep this color palette. I like to show that negative profit margin is in red, positive profit margin is in blue. These options, so I'm just going to click advanced for a second here to open this up as well. But these options here, for example, if you check mark stepped color, basically it changes the gradient into something more discrete, right? So if you want the color changes to be more kind of stepwise, then you can have this selected. I'm actually going to unselect this because I do want to have that gradient. If, for instance, you want to swap, you want to have blue being represented as negative and red being represented as positive, you can click on this reverse section here and it will swap the colors. I'm not going to do that because I actually do want red to be negative and blue to be positive. What I am going to select here is use the full color range. I want the positive to be really blue, and I want the negative to be really red. And finally, the other thing I'm going to do is I don't like these numbers. These ratios are automatically picked for me based on the data, and that's not what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check mark these two things here, and I'm going to select my number specifically that I want. So I'm going to deal with -1 as the lower threshold for profit margin and +1 for the upper end of that threshold. And I'm going to click on the center here and I'm going to make sure that it is at 0. I want the middle to be right at 0. Perfect. Now I have this all set up, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now you'll see that there's not a huge difference, but nonetheless a difference there. And I'm going to punch this up a little bit more, and I'm going to go back to color, click on color. And what I like to do is I like to add a little bit of a border. So I go to border here, and I'm going to add a little bit of a black border around my data points. And so now it looks a lot punchier. And actually I can actually click and scroll through and see how those data points change from year to year. Okay, there we go. So now we have our first visualization that's completed. In the next video, we're going to create a second visualization, and then we're going to put it all together and create a dashboard.